You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, I've been talking to this person for the better part going on 12 years. We've talked about the moment we're at during that time. None of us knew exactly when it was going to happen, but we knew it would, and it's here now. I'm talking about Andy Schectman, Miles Franklin, Precious Metals Investments. You find him at milesfranklin.com. Go over to the site. Andy, it's great to have you back on. I wish we were here under happier circumstances, but the message needs to get out. You need to understand that this time really is different. So tell us your perspective on things now.
Well, I guess I have two perspectives on things, Kerry. First of all, it's always good to be here. And anyone who wants, until our new website is launched, which is long overdue, information on pricing, send us an email at info@milesfranklin and say Kerry Lutz or the Financial Survival Network sent me, and we'll make sure that your listeners are treated the way that you would want them to, with a fantastic price and personalized service. But it's always good to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I have talked for 3 years about the growing chorus of countries uniting under a common theme, and that is removal from the Western hegemony and the Western hypocrisy and all that goes along with it, the sanctions, the bullying, the bombing, all of the things that has made much of the world look differently at the United States from what it once did. And the linchpin of that obviously has been Saudi Arabia. We talked about for 3 years, before anyone was talking about this, the significance of the Belt Road Initiative, the significance of gold being reclassified Tier 1, the only other one in the world by the Bank of International Settlements. We talked about the ramifications of the day we left Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia signing a joint military cooperation agreement with Russia. It's huge. I started screaming, this is it. Because after all, it is the protection of the Saudi kingdom and the promise that the Saudis made, by extension, that OPEC would value oil globally in dollars for that protection. The day we left Afghanistan, the agreement was signed between Russia and Saudi Arabia, which was the beginning of the end of the petrodollar. Subsequently, Saudi Arabia has joined the BRICS nations, this massive group: Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, plus 60 plus other countries who are vying for, have already applied to the BRICS Plus, including our allies to the south, Mexico, just a few weeks ago, which is shocking. But the ramifications of Saudi Arabia moving to a currency or a group that has promised to issue a new reserve currency pegged to commodities. After all, what is gold? The only other Tier 1 reserve asset. Who's been accumulating all the gold? Not just the BRICS countries, who are the largest producers and accumulators, but countries like Turkey, our ally, who last year bought more gold than anyone in the world and is continuing that year in 2023 with massive acquisition in January. In fact, central banks in 2022, Kerry, bought more gold than any time since 67, the second most in history. And those numbers in January here in 2023 are doubling down. A month-over-month increase of 196% from December. They are amplifying their efforts to de-dollarize and accumulate gold using the Western suppression of price to support the bond market, big scam, as cover. Now, it grows by the day, these things that are happening outside the country, including Saudi Arabia now applying for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a dialogue partner. It is the first step to full membership. They are a military organization as well, a very large military organization anchored by the Chinese army. So you have, on one hand, Saudi Arabia being protected by Russia, an agreement that was signed in August of 2021, and now by extension, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization being protected by China and Africa. You have what is in essence the beginning of the end of the petrodollar. First, they must position themselves so that they don't end up like Libya and Iraq did when they both threatened to sell their oil for gold and euro, but to be positioned and protected by the majority of the world's population and two very large armies. You can see the handwriting on the wall. It's bad enough that Saudi Arabia is moving away from the West and what is the dollar hegemony, the right to only price oil in dollars. That's coming to an end. But when we see our neighbors like Mexico formally apply to BRICS, when we see France just the other day do a massive liquid natural gas deal with the UAE and China to be paid for in yuan, bad enough we see that. But Macron just left China, and signed a 51-point treaty agreement ranging from 5G technology to military engagement. Yes, you heard that right, to military engagement, where Macron came out and publicly said that we must distance ourselves from the U.S. and its problems with China and Taiwan, where we can't even in Europe fix the problem in the Ukraine. Why should we think we can have any significant impact on what is happening in Taiwan? He went on to also say that a lot of people in Europe are complaining about the U.S. sanctions, not just on countries like Russia and Iran, but in corporations and companies who deal with other countries that the U.S. deems inappropriate, such as the French bank that was fined almost $4 billion a few years ago for trading with Iran, and that they want to distance themselves from that. One of the things that I found most shocking about the article in Politico that talked about this is a brand new article, is what wasn't said. I want to read to you something before I talk about what's happening inside the country. Happy to take any questions also. As is common in France and many other European countries, the French president's office, known as the Elysee Palace, insisted on checking and proofreading all of the president's quotes to be published in this article as a condition of granting the interview. This violates Politico's editorial standards and policy, but we agreed to the terms in order to speak directly with the French president. Politico insisted that it cannot deceive its readers and would not publish anything the president did not say. The quotes in this article were all actually said by the president, but some parts of the interview in which the president spoke even more frankly about Taiwan and Europe's strategic autonomy were cut out by the Elysee. You have our allies quietly leaving the room, and this is very troubling. And what happens when all of these countries are coordinated sufficiently enough with commodities, with military relationships, with strategic relationships, such as Iran and Saudi Arabia mending fences? Sunni and Shiite hated each other for centuries, but are now, as a peace deal brokered by the Chinese, sitting at the table and putting embassies in each other's countries to mend fences, because after all, my enemy's enemy is my friend. This is their one shot to break free of the centuries-old hegemony, not just by the U.S., but the West in general, Europe before that. They're breaking free. They realize that a system dominated by commodities and transparency, a la those commodities that each country will pledge to the new BRICS currency or to the new Shanghai Cooperation settlement currency, will be pegged to gold and other commodities, the veracity of which will be shown on a distributed ledger. I believe the successful 4-year trial of the digital yuan. When that happens, it is a religious experience as dollars are globally dumped, as no longer will they need to only take dollars for oil. Since 1974, every country on the planet's had to own it. It's created a synthetic demand for the dollar. Those days are coming to an end. And when those dollars come rushing home because they no longer are needed to buy oil, the world will dump them as fast as you can say dump. And the byproduct of those dollars flooding home will be interest rates that go to the moon to compensate for hyperinflation, which is the Great Reset. Stocks, bonds, real estate, and the dollar collapse simultaneously when Saudi Arabia makes the statement. First, they need to cover their 6 and their 12, that being protect themselves. And they've done that by aligning with the BRICS, with China, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Russia, and all of the others. So that's the bad news from outside the shores, and the bad news from inside our shores would be the weaponizing of the banking system, I guess you could call it. Janet Yellen, in her House subcommittee inquiry, told the representative of Oklahoma when he asked, Madam Secretary, will you protect and bail out all of my constituents in Oklahoma if a regional bank goes bust, just like you did Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank? And her answer was no. She said, no, we will need to have an uber majority of the FOMC, which is the Fed, the FDIC, myself, and the president to decide if they are systemic enough. But Kerry, these regional banks, almost 5,000 of them, are responsible for 70% of all the small business loans in this country. The small businesses have always been representative of nearly 40% of U.S. GDP. And even more shocking, when you look at what's happening to commercial real estate since the pandemic, they are responsible for the majority of the commercial real estate loans, not the big skyscrapers that JP and Citi and Morgan Stanley might back, but the majority of all of the commercial real estate in this country is run through these regional banks, which are now blowing up. Over $1 trillion was yanked out of these small regional banks over the last week in search of safety in the commercial banking system, because their money markets are paying a greater return than the CDs in the banks, which are systemic and will fail. And when they do fail, if they're not systemic enough, they won't be backstopped, according to the Treasury Secretary, which leads me to a thought process that I would like your people to think outside the box about. And then I'll take any questions you have, because on one hand, we have what troubles me outside. But what troubles me inside is the what if. And that is a lady named Lael Brainerd. Lael Brainerd was originally at the Treasury, and when Powell came up for reappointment, she ran for the Fed chairman. And I thought she would actually take it, because I didn't think the president would reappoint a Trump appointee, that being Fed Chairman Powell, but he did. It surprised me. And Lael Brainerd, when became vice chair at the Fed. Now, everyone bitches about Janet Yellen being at the Treasury or at the Fed and now at the Treasury. Lael Brainerd was at the Treasury and then the Fed. Now, she just left the Fed, and she is now at the White House advising the president in an economic advisory capacity. And what scares me about Lael Brainerd and her time at both the Treasury and the Fed is her thesis that she ran for the Federal Reserve chairman. And that was modern monetary theory. All transactions or all policy goes directly from the central bank. Her whole policy is abolishing the banks, including the commercial banks. Mm-hmm. So if she went to the Treasury and then the Fed, figured the lay of the land, talked about her philosophies, which were very open and candid, and now is advising the president, if you really want to have a central bank digital currency and do it the way Lael Brainerd wants, wouldn't the first step be to remove the 5,000 regional banks, light a fuse under them, scare everyone? Our business, Kerry, has gone parabolic. Over 12,000 new clients in 30 days. Wow. Those people who are running to the commercial banks, the perceived safety of the too big to fail commercial banks, are also running to gold. If you wanted to get rid of the banks, including the commercial banks, step one is to blow up the regional banks. Get everyone out of those banks terrified that they won't be bailed out, just like Signature and Silicon were, but we're told they won't be. So where do you go? Well, you go to the safety of the commercial banks, and they're paying a higher return. Great. Let's leave and blow up the regional banks, which is going to have a profound effect on the economy, on small businesses, and on commercial real estate. But if you really want to be diabolical and think about what could happen, what does Lael Brainerd want to do? Get rid of the banks, pen everyone into a small group of banks, and blow up the commercial banks. They're all tied together with massive amounts of derivatives. Last I looked, JP Morgan had over 50 trillion in derivatives. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. These are numbers that you can't even comprehend. None of us can. And these derivatives tie all of the commercial banks together. This is exactly why UBS was bailed out, Credit Suisse. And this is exactly why the less talked about $20 billion lifeline was given to the second largest bank in the world, the Swiss Bank Corporation, I believe they're called, by the U.S. Fed, not by the Swiss Central Bank. They know the systemic nature of all of this. And if you want to light a fuse and get everyone into those banks and then blow up those banks, well, there you go. Mission accomplished. You now roll out your new CBDC. Now, a lot of this is supposition, at least in terms of what's happening here. But follow the progression of events. Follow the person that seems to be maybe giving advice on this. If you want to get to that point where the commercial and the regional banks are gone, step one is to get everyone into a handful of small banks and that and blow them up. Could happen, maybe, maybe not. But the point of it is that we have so much happening outside the country, so much happening inside the country, policy decisions that are upside down, where 114 billion to the Ukraine is okay, including giving pensions to their government, when there's a $1.75 trillion pension shortfall in this country, but $5 billion to build a wall to keep fentanyl from pouring in and almost 6 million illegal immigrants pouring into this country is too much. Everything is upside down. So why do you buy gold and silver? Because the world has become very scary. And because there are many trigger points, I believe, whether it be outside the U.S. or inside, that could very quickly change the dynamics of everything we know as a country. And the worst part about all of this is that with my success comes trouble for everyone around me that I love and care about. This is not about getting wealthy. This is about accumulating wealth that the central banks are making a massive effort to do, of course, using the Western suppression to do it. But an asset that has outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and everything the world has thrown at it. So to me, this is about reaching for that lifeline as you're being yanked down under the water. And that's, honest to God, what I mean about gold and silver. And I hope people realize I think we're getting to the 12th hour based upon the massive expansion slowly into the mainstream as recognition of what's coming is becoming more pervasive.
And on that note, we're seeing $2,000 gold. Looks like it's there to stay. And silver is nearly $25.50 now, but moving up since it hit its floor. When was it? 4 months ago.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Fury Gold Mines is a Canada-focused exploration and development company committed to aggressively growing its scalable, high-grade gold assets with major drill campaigns planned across its 3.5 million-ounce portfolio. Fury is led by a management team of proven explorers and developers with a track record of success in advancing and financing project development. Fury Gold Mines is well-positioned to create value for investors with low-risk development growth and the potential for a new major discovery. Fury Gold Mines trades on the TSX and NYSE American under the ticker FURY. To learn more, go to furygoldmines.com. That's furygoldmines.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
At $18, yeah, and you know it's been a rough ride for those of us who believe that logic and outcome are correlated. There has been a great counterintuitive effort to suppress prices, but that's part of the game. You know, that's exactly what the central banks are doing. They're suppressing the paper price and accumulating the physical and then papering over the shorts. And that happens until finally the people who take the other side of the short say, no, I want delivery. And we're getting close to that moment. There's not enough gold and silver out there to handle this continued drawdown of supply by the big money. And it's the suppression of the paper price that's throwing everyone off the scent. Not the smart money, but most everyone in this country.
Makes you wonder how much gold and silver are really in GLD and SLV.
Yeah, it does. And why does GLD and SLV have massive short positions on it? Why should you be able to make it short an ETF? It makes no sense. But I do think there is gold and silver in there, just don't know how much. I think if the government ever tries to confiscate gold and silver again, that's their target. if you believe the numbers, SLV, I believe, is the largest stockpile of silver in the world, administered by the biggest crook on the planet. That crook who paid $920 million for suppressing the metals market to the Justice Department, allowed to administer the largest silver trust in the world, JP Morgan, and GLD, administered by a crook of equal caliber, that being HSBC Bank, who's paid billions and billions of dollars in fines, including for laundering drug money for cartels. It's a scam, it's a sham. But if you wanted to confiscate gold and silver, you have two funds that attract all of the big money, all of the financial advisors who make money keeping clients under management and tell them, buy GLD, buy SLD, don't buy the real thing. You don't want that. It's too hard to store, blah, 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 because they want to keep everyone under management. But now you have all this gold and silver held in central locations with a pink bow wrapped around them, administered by the cartel banks who suppress the price. You can have your cake and eat it too. No, we didn't infringe any civil liberties or break any laws. We just took the two funds. You can still own physical.
Yeah.
And doing that, it would allow them to not go door to door to people who are not as patriotic as they were back here at 33, and people who have NRA certificates on their front door. So I think that's a more likely scenario. But yeah, it's crazy. GLD and SLV are the worst ways to own precious metals, period. If you own it, read pages 6 through 12 titled Risk Factors. You'll sell it the next day.
I know. I actually read that, Andy, 12 years ago, and I'm sure they've added to it since. And nobody knows where it is, who has it, because there's sub-depositories throughout the world.
And, those sub-depositories, in the prospectus, it even says that the custodian does not reserve the right to visit premises of the sub-custodian. And if the sub-custodian is, in fact, not holding good delivery bars, they are not responsible for that, nor are they responsible for the errors and or omissions of the sub-custodians. The custodian, that being JP, has distanced himself so far from fraud and liability. It's outrageous and egregious, but this is part and parcel of the way that these institutions do business on a larger scale.
All right. So we can say clearly this time, this is your last warning.
Yeah. One of these times, the little boy like me who cries wolf sees the wolf. The wolf comes at some point. And that's the bummer of being early. But I swear to God, I'd rather be 62nd or 66 months, 6 years early than 60 seconds late. And Silicon Valley Bank is a good example of that. You woke up to a new reality on Monday morning, and that's exactly how this will go down. You'll wake up on a Monday morning, the BRICS have issued their new settlement currency, and Saudi Arabia is no longer taking dollars for oil. Or you'll wake up on a Monday morning and 4 other regional banks have brought down, a whole bunch of more banks and companies and insurance companies. I mean, the systemic nature of everything is beyond the scope of the Fed to be able to paper over. In the last 3 weeks, the Fed has added $400 billion to their balance sheet, which erases 2/3, almost 3/4 of 11 months worth of quantitative tightening in 3 weeks. I can't do it. It's inflate or default. And I think that's what the world is realizing and moving away from. Why sell oil or party favors if you're China to the United States for dollars that are being depreciated in the country that can pick and choose who can use the world reserve currency, and worse yet, weaponize it and kick you out of SWIFT and sanction and or confiscate your assets? It has ignited a daisy chain of events that I think it's too hard to stop it now. It's just a matter of time.
All right. So obviously this is going to lead to a global financial meltdown. I mean, I understand these countries trying to protect themselves the last minute, but between Europe and US, 40% of the global demand will evaporate for virtually everything overnight.
Well, and you can see even some of our allies in Europe are starting to exit stage left, like Macron. Look at Mexico over here. Rumor that Australia and New Zealand are going to join. Rumor that Japan is going to join. Don't know it to be true, but we're already seeing a lot of our allies, like Turkey, like Saudi Arabia, like Egypt, like Mexico, they're leaving. And I think you'll see that as a growing trend, as sides will have to be chosen, lines will have to be drawn, and at some point it becomes every man for himself.
Yeah, well, 40% of global demand for goods and services evaporates overnight. Nobody's left standing on this. It's going to take decades to rebuild.
it would be much more fun to talk about us all making money and sailing off on our yacht with a martini in hand. But that's unfortunately not the reality. The reality now is that gold and silver will allow you to survive and maybe even thrive, maybe take advantage of great opportunities once the dust settles. And, we'll find our way out of this. Don't ever count out Americans, especially when their back's against the wall. But this is real. And this is potentially the end of a 100-year role as being the world reserve.
Hey, it was a good run. It was good while it lasted. But I'm just thinking what the world looks like afterwards. I mean, China is having an economic collapse of their own, and everything's melting down there. Profits, everything. It seems like the only company doing well in the world is Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think
diversified.
The point of it is that what makes this outside force so compelling is the unity of it. What made the United States what it is was the unity of it. And that is what makes
them exist.
This group of countries together, their military, their GDP, their cohesiveness is greater than the West. And that is what they are using. And to make it work, you use commodities and transparency, blockchain to show what commodities are pledged. You have it audited. You do it right. It's their one chance. And I think they realize that. And that is the rallying cry. The glue are the commodities and the transparency that make it work. And I think they have a better chance of succeeding now than they've ever had. And that's what is making this, I think, so concerning, at least to me. And I wish more people saw it. Well, Fox News and CNBC are now talking about it like they're onto something. I've been screaming this on your show and everyone. 3 years. Wake up, people. It's coming. And if you don't get out of the way of what's coming, if you don't see what's coming, you can't get out of the way. Open your eyes and take a impartial, non-subjective look at it. And I think you'll be a little concerned by what you see.
Even states are trying to line up precious metals.
Texas,
storage, right?
Idaho, Missouri, Kansas, Alaska,
Oklahoma.
Yeah, they're all talking about not only allowing gold and silver to be held in the state treasuries, but to be used for debts, public and private. The Idaho representative, my hero, now let's not forget Representative Mooney from West Virginia, who spearheaded all of this, but gets up on stage, this guy from Idaho, and says, we need to let our constituents in the state of Idaho do what the central banks around the world are doing, dollarize and accumulate gold. There are a few good people in politics. There are a few people with their eyes open there who see what's coming. And God bless a guy like that, or Mooney, or any of these politicians who are standing up to the federal government and their brain dead monetary policy of the Federal Reserve and fiscal policy of the government. They are destroying the really good thing, and that is the world reserve status and the good graces of our foreign creditors.
Deliberately so. Hey, so then the question is, what do you buy, gold or silver?
Yes.
Is silver really the thing to buy, but it's less portable, or do you buy them both?
When the music stops, the place to be is the only other tier one reserve asset in the world, gold. But the pathway to getting there is generationally intriguing. I believe silver is an opportunity and the value of a generation that allows you to trade into gold when the ratio corrects. Roughly 80+1 now. It's averaged 40-1 for the last 200 years. It's coming out of the ground at 7-1. But it came on the ground at 16-1 to 5,000 years, meaning that the geologic ratio is disappearing. It is depleting because of the expansion in uses and the fact that it's found very near the surface in a form called epithermal. Big deposits were found forever ago. So silver to me is the greatest upside potential, the way to make money. Gold is money. So is silver. But in the end, most of my holdings will be in gold. Right now, a very large percentage is in silver. It is too intriguing of an opportunity to pass up. So hedge your bet and buy some of both. They've both been considered money that are not simultaneously someone else's counterparty risk or liability for 5,000 years. And in times of great uncertainty like we see right now, that's when you want to rely on history and the value found in something that is lacking counterparty liability. And now is the time to do that.
I couldn't agree with you more. So just tell us how we buy gold from you and how we connect with you.
Yeah, we've been knee deep in what has been an awful experience for almost a year now, bringing their new website to market. It's 99% ready to roll. Until then, send us an email at info@milesfranklin. Our website is operational. The store there is not. The prices, the inventory are not. So send us an email at info@milesfranklin.com. Mention the Financial Survival Network sent me. We'll send you an up-to-date inventory. We'll answer any questions you have, and we'll contact you if you want to be contacted. And we'll make it a good experience. That I can assure you, and certainly appreciate the endorsement from you, Kerry. It means an awful lot. Take that real serious too.
Well, you're the only people that I buy metals from, because I know when I buy them from you, I will get them. Not that I bought recently, but in the past, that's always been the case. And till there's no way to ship it, you'll be shipping it.
Well, good thing we don't live too far away from each other. You can always come drive and I'll give it to you. But
Appreciate
aside from that, yeah, I agree with you. Until we're not able to do it anymore, we'll be here and plugging away and work real hard to keep our good name and our reputation intact, and the honor of an endorsement from you. We'll do all we can to uphold that, and that I can promise you and your listeners out there that's priority number one.
Going on 12 years now, and like I say, you're the only one I trust. Hey, if you've got a question for Andy or myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. The link to Miles Franklin's website or to Andy is in the show notes of this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for your free newsletter. Andy, we called this many, many years ago. Didn't know how long it was going to take, but clearly it's getting much closer, and wish everybody Godspeed. And Andy, we will talk to you again soon.
You stay well, brother. It's always good to see your face, Kerry, and hopefully we'll get together in person here real soon. I'll look forward to picking up where we left off. Until then.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.